It started like any other weekend getaway. A group of 5 friends, tired from their grueling work weeks, decided to rent a charming, rustic Airbnb nestled deep in the woods. The kind of place you'd see on a postcard. Wooden beams, large windows, and a sense of peace that could only be found in the middle of nowhere. They were eager to unwind, to escape the stress of everyday life. But as soon as they arrived, something felt off. It wasn't the house itself, per se. It had an old, lived-in quality, full of character, but the air was thick with something unspoken. They couldn't place it, but all of them felt it. It was that familiar, uneasy feeling you get when you know something's wrong, but you don't know what. As they unpacked, they noticed something strange, a padlocked basement door. The old-fashioned lock was heavy, an antique design that looked out of place in an otherwise modern home. A handwritten note was taped to the door. "Do not enter. Stay away from the basement." At first, they laughed it off. Maybe it was just the owner's quirks, some bizarre request left behind for no real reason. But curiosity nagged at them, especially after night fell. The wind howled outside, and the floorboards creaked in the stillness of the house. They were alone. Or so they thought. That's when the noises started. At first, it was subtle, a faint scratching, like nails on wood. Then came the whispers. Soft, unintelligible words drifting up through the cracks in the floor. But when they tried to focus on the sounds, they couldn't quite make out what was being said. The group gathered in the living room, all of them wide-eyed, trying to ignore the creeping sense of dread. "It's probably just the wind," one of them, Mike, said, but his voice wavered with uncertainty. But by midnight, the noises were unmistakable. A slow, rhythmic banging, like someone or something was trapped beneath the floorboards. The whispers grew louder, clearer, as if calling out their names. That's when the first person disappeared. It was Sarah, the quiet one, who'd always been sensitive to strange occurrences. She was in the kitchen, alone, when she heard someone calling her name, soft at first, then growing more desperate. She turned to the door, expecting to see one of the others standing there, but there was nothing. No one. She stepped toward the basement door, drawn by something she couldn't explain. The whispers grew louder, now a chorus of voices, chanting her name in eerie unison. In a trance, she reached for the padlock. To her surprise, it clicked open, as if it had been waiting for her. She entered. The door slammed shut behind her, and no one heard from Sarah again. The rest of the group panicked. They searched the house top to bottom, calling out her name, but it was as though she'd vanished into thin air. They found nothing, except for a faint smell of decay lingering in the air, something rotting just beneath the surface. They tried to leave, but the house seemed to have other plans. The front door wouldn't open. The windows wouldn't budge. They were trapped. As the hours passed, the group started to unravel. The whispers never stopped, growing louder, more insistent, until they started coming from everywhere. Under the floor, from behind the walls, even from the shadows themselves. And one by one, they began to vanish. Mike was the next to go. He claimed he saw a shadow moving in the hallway, something with long, twisted limbs that reached out for him. He tried to escape, but when he turned around, he was gone. Just gone. Then Emma. who swore she heard someone crying in the dark, only to discover it was a voice pleading for help. She followed the sound into the basement, and like Sarah, she never returned. By this time, it was just Mark and Rachel, the final two. They had tried everything, calling for help, trying to break the windows, banging on the walls, but nothing worked. They were trapped in the house, with no way out, and with every passing hour, they could hear more footsteps, more whispers, more knocking from the basement. They couldn't take it anymore. Rachel, shaking and tearful, said, "We need to leave. We need to get out of here, Mark." But Mark was too afraid to move, and that's when the last chilling voice echoed through the air. "You'll never leave." The house seemed to close in on them, the walls pushing tighter, the air growing cold. The basement door swung open with a loud, haunting creak. It was as if the house itself was inviting them in. Mark, in a desperate, final attempt to save himself, bolted for the door. But just as he reached it, the whispers turned into a deafening scream, and he was pulled back, dragged down by an unseen force. Rachel never made it out either. The next morning, authorities found the house abandoned. No sign of the friends. The door to the basement was locked again, as if it had never been opened. No sign of Sarah, Mike, Emma, Mark, or Rachel. Just their belongings, strewn about the house in a state of panic. But the strangest part? In the basement, there was an old photograph, buried beneath the floorboards. A photo of the 5 friends, taken years before they even stepped foot in that house. The house had been waiting for them. And it's still waiting, still whispering, still calling to the next group of unwitting souls. Don't go to that Airbnb. Stay away from the basement.